Hello and welcome back. My name is Kabira and this is Kabira Speaks. So recently I just left my job as a therapist, which I went to school for 5 years for, and became a waitress. So I kind of wanted to just fill people in on, what I've been up to, what I've been doing, what brought me to this decision, and what I'm planning on doing next. So to start out, basically I've always had a heart for different types of people. From a very young age. Some of my earliest friends were on the spectrum or they had physical disabilities. Part of that is just the way I am, but what I think really happened with me is that I had a lot of early exposure to different need people. My mother used to take care of a couple different kids who had special needs. And so they were like always just around. They're always just a part of my life. My dad built a ramp at our house so people with wheelchairs could come in and out freely. I had friends when I was younger who were nonverbal. I had friends who, needed extra help doing certain things. And that was very normal for me. And yeah, I've always known that I wanted to work with all sorts of different types of people, including the physically disabled, the intellectually disabled. And so for most of my working career, that's exactly what I've done. I've always tended to have human services jobs. So when I was 18, I worked with young adults who were working to become more independent. So I'd help them find jobs. I would take them to social events in the community. I would help them grocery shop. I would transfer these types of skills to them. And I really enjoyed this work. Looking back though, it is a little odd that I was able to do this without a degree or excuse me, I'm kind of sick, or any type of formal training, but I think I know why. So this type of work, there's a huge demand for it and not enough people who do those types of jobs. So they, you don't really need to have a formal education to perform that type of work, even though I think you should. But anyway, so that's what I did when I was 18. I really liked it, did that for a couple years. Loved the people I worked with. I worked for a good company. Then, I'm a student at this point. I'm a social work student. Then I transferred schools and I moved to the Mansfield area where I went to college. And then I started working at a group home. So the group home was 3 adult men who were physically disabled, intellectually disabled, and they were all entirely nonverbal. And when I first walked into that house, I remember thinking I cannot do this. Now, I knew I always wanted to work with people, but there's a reason I chose social work over something like nursing, because I was really worried about the physical aspect of, helping professions. I didn't know how I would handle bodily fluids or just all the things that a body can do. I didn't know how I was going to be able to handle that. But I got this job, tried it out, and there was a learning curve for me. I'm not going to say that, it was easy. There's definitely a learning curve, but once I got over that, I did enjoy the job. So I did that on Saturdays and Sundays, 15 hours at a time, which is crazy looking back. But that's what I did when I was a student, going to Mansfield. And I paid the bills. I learned a lot. I learned how to take care of people. I learned a lot about communicating with people who can't speak, which would prove to be very useful for me later on. But then I moved again. I moved to Westchester, and I'm a grad student at this point, right? And when you're a social work student, the question that people always ask you is, what population do you want to work with? And I didn't know. I really was kind of just figuring things out. But what I used to always say, regrettably, was, I don't care who I work with, I just don't want to work with the elderly. I don't even know why I said that. I suppose I had some sort of prejudice against older people, which I have since worked through. But I moved into this new town, and even though I had kept saying, I'm not going to work with the elderly, I don't want to do it, the first job I accepted was with the elderly. Actually, I worked with this one older woman. I worked with her all summer long at her house every single day, 8 hours a day. She was ill, and she didn't have any special needs or disabilities, but she was sick, and so she just needed someone to be there. So that I was her person. And I love this woman so much, and we had a really special relationship. I think she could tell me things that she couldn't tell her family because, she was sick, she was scared, and I was a little bit removed from the situation so that I was a safe person to talk to. She ended up passing away at the end of the summer, And then I had to leave the company just because I learned that I could work with the elderly, but it was just really difficult that I lost her. You know, I loved her, I had her for a summer, and then I lost her. And people who work in, you know, that sort of environment, they are very, very strong. And I just didn't think I could do that, or that it was the job for me. So anyway, those are just some of the sort of things that I've done. I think my favorite job I've ever had was being a TSS. Now, a TSS is a therapeutic support staff. You've probably seen one in action before, kind of, you know, right alongside of you, and maybe didn't know that's what they were doing. So a TSS works with students in schools and works with kids like at their homes after school. And that's exactly what I did. I had 2 kiddos who I worked with, who I loved dearly. I love their families. I loved this job. It gave me a lot of joy. I especially loved the school I worked at. So it was a small school. It focused a lot on speech and occupational therapy. Actually, their motto was, not being able to speak is not the same as having nothing to say. I think that's really beautiful. If I could give my dying dollar to any organization, it would be to this school. Actually, I'll drop a link if anyone wants to like research it or look it up to donate or anything like that. Really special place. But I ended up leaving this job because I just felt like I was supposed to be moving in some sort of direction, like some upward path. And all the other TSSs at the school and in the company, you know, they were in their 20s. There weren't really people who were older than me working in this job. So in my head, I was like, okay, that means that this isn't a forever job. On top of that, it was contract work. So I wasn't actually employed by the school. I worked for a different company. And as a contract worker, I didn't get sick days. I didn't get vacation. I was working full-time hours, but I would never be considered a full-time employee. So that plus that other little nasty voice in my head saying, you have to, you know, keep moving on, caused me to leave this job, even though I loved it so much. So from there, I got a job at the master's level as a therapist. So this is what I had worked for all along. And then I turned out to really not like it. So it's like still baffling to me. I'm still trying to figure it out, like the things I didn't like about the job. But so I was a therapist for children. I was going to their homes. I was working with them. I was working with their parents. And I think part of the issue is I was depressed at the time. And then I was taking on the emotional burden of other people and trying to, you know, be the bridge between them and their parents. Because a lot of parents don't know how to talk to their children, especially if their children has mental health issues or other disabilities. So I was trying to be that gap, but also I was really insecure because I am young and I don't have kids. And, you know, all these things were telling me that I wasn't good enough for the job. And I finally just quit. And that's something that's still bothering me. I feel really guilty about it, I guess. That's something that people like don't really tell you when you're studying in this field. The relationships you make, it is so difficult to leave those people behind, but you have to. Legally, you have to, because once the professional relationship is over, your relationship is over. But I still think about those kids all the time. I still think about their families. Things remind me of them like day in and day out. But yeah, so for the time being, I picked up a job as a server. I went to bartending school first, which is a story for another day. But now I'm a waitress. And I actually want to tell you more about what that has been like for me. But I'm going to cut the video off here and I will tell you more about that in part 2. Okay, thanks for listening, guys. I'll see you soon.